order. The meeting is also being live streamed. Adequate notice of the meeting was provided in the New Jersey Herald. It was also posted on the Sparta Township website and its bulletin board in accordance to all provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. If you could please rise and salute the flag with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Marissa, you could please call the roll?
Michael Joseph,
Here.
Richard LaRufa,
Here.
Richard Rawbecker,
Here.
Mark Scott,
Yes, here.
Landon Tenieri,
Here.
Chairman Kenneth Larry,
Here.
Glenn Keynes.
Here.
Just for the public, the items on the agenda tonight are the following. We have one resolution to be memorialized, and then the application, Sparta Evangelical Free Church for D variance. The chair will entertain a motion approving the Danielle and Michael McKeever 15-23 application for C variance.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Marissa, please call the roll.
Michael Joseph,
Yeah.
Richard LaRufa,
Yes.
Richard Rawbecker,
Yes.
Mark Scott,
Yes.
Landon Tenieri,
Yes.
Chairman Kenneth Larry.
Yes. And it's the practice of this board to adjourn at 10 p.m. sharp and not to hear any new applications after 9:30. And the first application, Sparta Evangelical Free Church, if you can come forward, please. Then, Mr. Urson, before we start, just for the public record and so forth, as we know, it's a D variance. You'll need 5 affirmative votes to approve the application. We have 5 full board members here tonight and 1 alternate, Landon, which will be voting tonight too. So I just wanted to clear that for the record. If you want to move forward, I assume.
I do, Mr. Chairman. We'll see how it goes. And we're not expecting to be up against your deadline of 10 o'clock.
So-
But I heard the announcement.
And also, I make announcements each time for these D variances that, as you know, of course, they're tied to the land, not the applicant, not the owner of the land, but tied to the land in perpetuity for the public, so they realize that. And also, before you start, you'll present the case with your applicant. After you're finished, our board and professionals will have any comments and questions. We'll go next, and after we're finished, we'll open it to the public.
Very good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then, Glenn, would you mind? Oh, no, no one has to be qualified here tonight. Just have the lawyer and,
have to have him
oh,
rise
Mr.
up on his-
Dykstra.
You have to have him rise up on his
Mr.
hind legs.
Dykstra, yes.
Mr. Dykstra, do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in the proceedings before the board tonight, so help you God?
I do.
And your name is?
Kenneth Dykstra,
And you are employed by?
Dykstra Walker Design Group.
You're going to be testifying as what, Ken?
I'm a licensed professional engineer, planner, and land surveyor.
And you've been here more times than you care to imagine?
Well, many
Or than you can even remember, that's the problem. And your license is valid as of tonight, right, Ken? Anybody have any problem with Mr. Dykstra's qualifications?
None.
Okay, counsel.
Good evening, members of the board. Just for the record, I'm John Urson of Shane Price, and I represent the applicant, the Sparta Evangelical Free Church Incorporated. For the record, this is block 17001, tax lot 3, 429 Lafayette Road. The application tonight is for an addition to the church building. And just by way of just extremely brief preview, what you're going to hear tonight is that there's, had previously been approved a much larger Phase 2 and a Phase 3 for this church. This is now coming in as the addition that the church would like to present to the town and seek approval for. And importantly, the testimony tonight is going to be that the addition to the church is not for additional church attendees. It's to move some parts of their programming out of one section of the building and provide a more efficient and safe place, particularly for children's ministry. So the testimony, I believe, is going to show that it's not going to increase the number of attendees for services or the number of parking spaces or impact the septic, but rather it's an allocation of the people in the new section. And so with that very short preview, I would introduce Mr. Dykstra to go through and start with a quick recap of the existing conditions and describe the proposed addition to the building.
Yes, the subject property located on Houses Corner Road was originally approved actually over 20 years ago with for the church facility, and to this date, the parking lots were built, the road was built in, the boulevard entry, and phase one of the project. So phase one of the project was about 30,000 square feet. I think it's 32,750 square foot building sits there today. And just to take a little more history there, the original approval, phase 1 through 2, the full build out was over 90,000 square foot facility. This property was, lot 3 is part of I'll call it a larger tract that was the original 105 acre parcel. And 20 years ago, it was subdivided to create Lot 3 where the church now sits. Adjacent Lot 2, which fronts over on 15, has a building that's very close to Route 15. That was a building that was renovated, and that's used for office facilities related to the church. And then there's basically another parcel, a large parcel in the back where a lot of open space at this point, and there's also some ball fields, soccer fields in the front there that I'm sure you've all seen.
So, Mr. Dykstra, if you would just reference, and for the board's notes and for the records, none of the plans have been changed. We're making reference tonight to the submitted plans. So, Mr. Dykstra, if you would just reference the existing conditions sheet, and then maybe just proceed right to start to describe what the proposed addition is.
All right, the site plan set that was submitted was last revised January 26, 2024 to address,
Oh, excuse me. Do you have a microphone?
let's,
Is that picking everything up on the desk there? You think that's
Should.
okay?
talking relatively loud.
Yeah, because it's a requirement, as you know, for the state
I
to
can
have
sit-
it.
Sit closer to it.
If you don't mind,
Speak again, I'm sorry. Just speak.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
clearly, Marissa, everything? Yeah, all right, thank you.
All right, so the plan set that was submitted was last revised on January 26, 2024 to address completeness comments from Dave Simmons. We submitted a response, and Dave has subsequently written another report. The existing condition of Lot 3 is the 16.125 acre lot. And on that lot is the existing Phase 1 building that I already discussed, 32,750 square feet. There's a parking lot on the north side, the east side, and the south side of the building. And on I guess the westerly end of this lot, there's a boulevard roadway that was constructed that services the subject property. The property is served by municipal water, so that we're on the township water, and it has an individual sewage disposal system on site. And we already went through the process with the county health department related to the proposed addition. Proposed addition, that's shown on sheet 3 of your plans. It's a one-story, 10,440 square foot addition. Size is about 154 feet by 68 feet, more or less. That's some notches in it. So back to the sewage disposal system, we, as a prerequisite, we first went to the county health department last year and gained their approval for to confirm that this addition the system could handle this addition. So we have that certification and sign off from the health department. This involved actually a testing by Wilson Services, some minor repairs to the system, and then I wrote a report, certified the system, and the health department approved it for the addition. Straightforward. This was always in the planned area of development for the church where this addition is going. It attaches right to phase one and meets all the setback requirements. I think the only technical reason we're here for this is considered D variance is because we don't meet all the conditions of the conditional use criteria. So the church is a conditional use allowed in the rural residential zone. But in this case, we don't meet the parking requirement. 20 plus years ago, we sought a waiver from the parking requirement. I think 604 spaces were required, and it was finally approved at 412 spaces. That would be that was for the full build out of the 90,000 plus square foot facility. So at this point, we built one phase, 32,750 square feet, and we're adding another 10,440 square feet to it. So this is not even close to the grand plan to fully develop the property, but this is all that's anticipated at this time for the property. It's been 20 years just for phase one, and so now we're adding a portion of the next phase. Parking is, as I said, parking, 604 spaces were required, but that has to do with the calculation. And the reason we got a variance before for this is because for churches, they make you count the sanctuary space at one space per 90 square feet. So that added up to a lot of square foot. And then the overall square footage is fairly large. Balances at one space per 200 square feet. So do the math, and it ended up at 604 spaces required. But the church in no way needed that number of spaces, so it was approved at 412. And currently, what's constructed there are 389 spaces.
Schematic for the addition on the board?
Yes, I do.
Maybe we could just introduce that, and then we'll have Mr. Salvinson come up.
These are the architectural plans prepared by Charles Schaefer Associates. And the date of these plans is November 9th, 2023. And the sheet A1, which is the second page of the set, provides you with the elevation views of this building. The building's going to be designed to match the look of the existing building, and we'll have a cultured stone foundation location across the whole bottom for appearance. And but again, Mr. Salvington can explain this plan in a little more detail if you'd like.
So can you flip to the floor plan?
This building will be constructed on a slab foundation, so there's no basement under this section of the building.
There.
And then, and it's a one floor level plan.
Okay, and just when the last comment you made, you're referring to page A3 of that set.
Yeah, A3 is the first floor plan, yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'm going to call up Mr. Salvinson to describe the uses of the building, and then both of our witnesses would be available for the board's comments, if that's okay.
Okay, good. Len, would you mind?
Not at all,
No?
sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, the proceedings before the board tonight, so help you God?
I do.
And who are you?
My name is Stuart Salvikson.
Stuart, I think what we should do, let's move that mic a little closer to
Yeah.
you. And Stuart is with an E or a U?
U-A-R-T.
And spell your last name, Stu?
S-A-L-V-I-G-S-E-N.
And you're a licensed professional architect in the state of New Jersey?
No.
What are you?
I'm just here representing the church. I'm on,
What's your position with the church?
Thanks, John.
I am a member of the church and I'm an elder of the church as well.
You're on the board of trustees or something like that?
I'm an elder and then I'm on the building committee, which is a group of us.
Okay. So you got to tell the truth. You knew that, though.
He plays out either way.
I know, he knew that. That was last Sunday's sermon. All right, so why don't you tell the board what's going on with this building?
Sure, so maybe because we've described for the board that there had been a larger plan with Phase 2 and Phase 3. In 20 years, the church hasn't made any additions. So maybe start with the thinking about why you needed this addition, and then we'll transition into how it's going to be used.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, the primary purpose of the addition or the main reason we needed it is within our existing phase, our children's area, nursery area is in a section of classrooms that wasn't intended to be for long-term, but it's ended up being 20 years. But again, we were going to build out Phase 2 and Phase 3. Again, we don't know how everything's going to go ahead of time. So that children's wing, though, in addition, just where things have become more security-minded over that 20 years, it's not very easy to secure. The bathrooms enter off of that hallway, the main bathrooms for anyone coming out to use restrooms. Now they have to go through that children's wing. Also on the back side, there's a stairwell that goes upstairs and then exits. So you ideally want an area where you check, any kids up to 6th grade into that area, and you know who's coming in and out of that area. In addition to that, during our service, our Sunday morning service, there's a children's program that goes on simultaneously. So they have an area that's more more entertaining. I don't know if that's the word, but that they can go up to there, and that's being used in a couple classrooms that you can join together upstairs, but it's not really set up and suited for that. And again, it's in a different area of the building than the other children's classrooms. So you just have the function's not there. The audio visual's not there for that. It's, there's no stage. So that's the other purpose. These classrooms, or there's nursery classrooms and then classrooms from ages up to actually 5th grade, where you would have one check-in spot and then the rest of the doors would remain locked, obviously just emergency exits. And then you have this multi-purpose room, which would have a little stage here that program could happen during the Sunday morning service.
And I think the board would know this, but your largest attendance on an average weekly basis is your Sunday services?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Dykstra testified about the parking spaces. The church has been operating there for more than 20 years?
Yep. Yes.
And
Or no, 2005 or 6, we moved into the building, so close to it. It's just to be honest about it, be accurate about it.
accurate. And the parking has been adequate? There's never been a situation where you've overflow parking or any problem with parking?
We've never had to use any overflow parking. There's a third section of parking that barely ever gets any cars, maybe a couple in there. But that is one of the largest areas and we barely ever use it.
And in the intro, I said that the board would hear that this wasn't intended to add more families, more attendees. It's just a matter of dispersing them in the building. Was what I said accurate?
Yes, yeah, because again, this isn't going to be having any additional, the services are still happening in the same place they always had in that same room that has the same capacity, obviously, which just fluctuates up and down, but we're not changing that. We're not changing anything about the
Same
program.
number of adults you're expecting to attend your services, you're just moving the children from a place that was temporary to a place that's a permanent home.
Correct.
I don't think I have any further questions, Mr. Chairman, so Mr. Dykstra and Mr. Salvinson are both available for the board's
All
questions.
right, well, thank you, Ms. Hurst. We'll open up to the board. I just have a few questions. And Mr. Dykstra, did you take care of that Wilson Services report where there was a couple unsatisfactory listings in there.
Yes.
With
yes,
the
yes,
lid not being secure, some safety issues.
They made all the repairs, then we certified the system, wrote a report and that has been submitted to David Simmons. I don't know if the board has it, but I do have another copy if you'd like it.
You have that, David, then, I assume?
Yes, I
Yeah,
do.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so the repairs were made, the system was in fine working order, the disposal beds were dry as far as they could probe, so that they're functioning nicely, and just some repairs to the pump tank and basically the tank and some piping.
Right.
And that was it.
All right, thank you. And then, it's hard to predict the future, but what about down the future with more expansion with the classrooms on this site or not, or?
Right, so we haven't, the initial phase 3 of this was a dedicated sanctuary, because right now we use what we have called a worship center, which is a gym that we set up chairs and take them down. We have nothing planned we actually redesigned this to where this would be the complete building right now, not knowing the future. So the initial one actually had a hallway all the way through it to go to that. We actually eliminated that right now because it just didn't serve the purpose. So if we ever did, again, that's not in the
Yeah.
plans right now.
Thank you. I know once we get to David's report, he has a lot of comments in there, but if you want to call on the rest of the board, Marissa, please.
Michael Joseph.
Yeah. So, the way I understand it, the current, where the kids are currently, they're going to be now moved to this new area. So what's going to become of the old space?
So the old space will likely not all be used. We may have, sometimes there's some other meeting that might go on, some other group that, but it's not, the intention is not to use it. It'll get used during the week, maybe for some other small groups and things like that. But Sunday mornings during our peak time, it will probably not be used.
That's all my questions.
Richard LaRupa.
Yeah, I have one issue on fire and life safety, and I'm sorry the architect's not here tonight, but I think it's a coordination between the site plan and the architectural plans. Could you put the site plan back up where you show the final layout with the walkways? On the east side of the building, you have exits from the classrooms, emergency exits, and the architectural plan shows it as an emergency exit. You have another plan after that shows us the new walkway?
Well, this does, this is just, I
Okay.
think the next plan is a little larger scale.
Yeah, that's yeah.
This one has for drainage and the other
Okay,
grading.
but you have exits on the east side of the building there from the classrooms. However, every building I've ever worked in, the idea for a fire exit is you go out of the building and you go as far away from the building as possible. And that's always the routine. You go to the back parking lot or something. This one just shows the exits on that side of the building. The walkway just connects them to each other and then goes back into the dead ends in the other building. I would suspect that sidewalk has to extend the opposite way to take them away from the building in an emergency. Just to,
Well,
the idea of the exit is you get out of the building and you get as far away as possible. And every building I ever worked in, you have the fire drills where you do that. And in this case, God forbid there's a fire, they can go out those exits, and the architectural plans show the distances to the emergency exits. But then you're outside the building and you're right next to the buildings, and you're in a kind of a courtyard there.
Sure.
I think the sidewalk has to extend back to the back parking lot to get them away from the building. You're talking about kids in a classroom, that's a classroom building.
Well, frankly, this is a lawn area, it's not a.
Well, it's a lawn area now, but if you got a foot of snow and ice on it, that should be cleared as an emergency exit to get children out of the building and away from the building completely. I think you just have to extend a sidewalk out the back and make sure it's maintained and cleaned. But again, the architect would probably be able to address that. It's a coordination between the site plan and the architectural plans, but I think it's an important issue when you have a classroom building. The other item is on the water line coming in from the easement to the soccer fields. On the boulevard there, just where the pavement ends and the the gravel begins, if you want to call it that, you're showing a water valve. And I was glad to see, I went out there, I was glad to see it's actually a fire hydrant there, which is good for fire life safety. But I think that should be flagged on the plan. And maybe you need another plan just to show fire safety for a classroom building. It shows a water valve.
Water valve,
And that's
okay, so
that-
there's a hydrant out, yeah, there's definitely a hydrant out there, right?
There's a hydrant there, but it just doesn't show on the
It's not
plans.
shown.
Yeah,
It's probably just a drafting issue, wasn't turned on.
okay.
But-
Yeah, it just, I think that's important for the life safety aspect to tie in with the architectural design.
We'll certainly amend the plan to show that.
But-
fire.
Talk to the architect about it, but I think it's important that both of those things are,
Yeah, no, the hydrant will go on the site plan, which is my plan.
okay. That was it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Richard Rohrbacher.
I don't have a question at this time. I may have later.
Mark's,
Keep Mr. Lowry on his toes.
Thank you, Rich.
You're welcome.
Mark Scott.
Yes, hi. Was this a D variance originally?
Yeah, it was a conditional use, we didn't meet all the conditions of the conditional use criteria, turns it into a D variance.
Right.
It was, at the
And-
time, it was height, building height and parking.
And so now we're asking for an additional variance,
No,
D variance?
no. I don't think you're asking for a use variance. I think you had to apply just as council did. But they are not asking for an additional use variance as far as I can tell, because they're not triggering any exacerbation of the conditional use standards. They're not increasing the height, and the other issue was parking. And as I understood it, and David will correct me if I'm wrong, as I understood it, parking is keyed to the number of seats in the sanctuary. And since they're not increasing that, it doesn't trigger anything. However, what it does is it gives you still jurisdiction over the approval because you had original jurisdiction, and the planning board would not be able to hear this one, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that's why Mr. Urson, in his fertile legal mind, decided that this is where it should be lodged, and I absolutely agree with him.
And excuse me, Mr. Urson, when was the original approval? The year, Mr. Dykes?
2001, I believe.
Was anyone on the board at that time approving that? I was, so I remember it, yeah.
You're asking for a variance on the trees, right? You don't want to put in 12-inch trees. Why is that?
I don't think that was there were some comments in the report.
I think Dave mentions it.
Dave mentions he'd like to see more landscaping around the addition. And then he talked about buffering to adjacent properties, but I don't think that makes any sense in this case, since the only residential properties near us, well, most of them are, there's actually just one house that's on Layton Lane. Everything else is commercial. Then you have the septic place, North Jersey Septic. And then to the north, there's the just woodland, so I don't think it'd make any sense to put a buffer there.
But you have you have a new building going right up against 15, correct?
No, this building's set back,
Well, I understand
400 or
it's a
500 feet
setback, but
from 15.
no, I know, but there is a new building which we failed to discuss tonight that was approved by the planning board
Oh, that's a different
just a
application.
few weeks ago.
That's-
I don't know why it didn't come to the zoning board, but I guess they just said it was an office building, and then it became a permitted use, and then they took it to the planning board. That, they didn't come through us, because they said it was a office building,
Yeah, it was permitted in that.
even though it
DD
was
zone, yes.
a veterinary hospital, right?
I wasn't involved, but that's what I understand, yes.
Okay.
But that's not related to this application.
Well, it kind of is, right? Aren't you asking to use the water, the water from that site is going to go into the retention basin? The water from the site we were talking about, that the newly approved unit, the newly approved area. And you're going to push your water into that retention basin, correct, or not? Is that correct?
This site on the adjacent lot 2 owned by this property, there's a
Retention.
there's a detention basin there already
Detention,
that was-
sorry.
that was constructed, and that has an overflow that crosses Houses Corner Road. That was approved when, that's actually before Houses Corner Road was realigned, so there, but Dave Simmons asked us for more information about that detention basin. We went out and performed an updated as-built, and he was satisfied with the as-built plan, and it showed that there was no impact to that new approval for the veterinarian hospital.
You know, you mentioned that it becomes an overflow over Houses Corner Road. Can you explain that to me, what you're saying there?
Well, it doesn't overflow. The basin, if it fills up, it will flow through a pipe that goes under Houses Corner Road. It doesn't go over Houses Corner Road. So it's a piping system that actually the DOT put it in when they realigned Houses Corner Road.
Because it was quite full the other day, but then again, it was raining. And so now, here we are on the aquifer, and we're going to pave over the corner of Houses Corner Road and 15 with the new office building / veterinary hospital. And then now we're going to add more impervious coverage with this building, correct?
The
That-
animal
that-
hospital isn't part of this parcel, and I don't believe their detention basin, they are building their own detention basin, but that's a separate parcel.
I
We don't
understand.
own that
I
at all,
understand.
and I believe their drainage, I'm sorry if I'm.
No, you're
but
right.
Why don't you,
it's
why don't you
staying
let,
within their
why don't you, you have no, I didn't qualify you as an engineer. You got one of the best engineers
I'm sorry.
around.
I was, yes, and that's why I.
Well, as I have not looked at the plans for that hospital, so I don't, but I did talk to Dave Simmons about it. He said they had an infiltration basin on their site as part of their stormwater management plan. So that's unrelated to our basin. Our basin is on our site. So, and that was in before that project was ever contemplated. It's been constructed for over 20 years. Or about 20 years.
Okay. Okay, I look forward to hearing Dave's report.
Landon?
I just have two comments or questions. I agree with the idea of the sidewalk extended to the gravel parking lot. And even once we get to the gravel parking lot, maybe even continuing it around the rest of the interior property like it's kind of done on the other side.
Well, but I don't think we necessarily object to running the sidewalk out, but
I just
that
said
parking lot doesn't get
consideration.
used, am I right?
That's the one that I was referencing,
That's an oil
because
chip.
it's the farthest away from everything that goes on, that's the lot that rarely gets used. So, but yeah, we're not opposed to, you know, the sidewalk going there. obviously.
Connecting to that parking area, but I don't think at this point in time, they really have an interest in, or a need to have sidewalks connecting that to the sidewalks on the other part of the site. frankly.
And then I wanted to ask, where does the current high school students go for their education? And
So-
they're going to be using this space as well?
No, they won't be, because this is, again, gonna be designed for little children, even the decor will be for age appropriate, up to 5th grade. And they meet in the upstairs, primarily upstairs classrooms of the existing wing. And there's no, again, this is designed for little kids.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have for now.
Now, we could work our way back to you, Rich. You said you might have some questions.
No questions at this time.
Then we can get to David Simmons' report, our board engineer. David, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, the report I prepared and I'm referring to is dated February 15th, 2024. The applicant has addressed several of the items in the report, but I'll just highlight some issues. Starting on page 3 of the report with regards to the zoning, I do agree that the building that's proposed and the existing and the proposed addition do meet all the bulk requirements. And as it's been indicated, it's a conditional use, and they are deficient in the parking, so that's what triggers us here tonight, as Mr. Keynes described, keeping jurisdiction with this board. As far as the overall site plan and future additions, as they indicated tonight, basically what you see before the board tonight is my understanding, that's what they're proposing for the foreseeable future right now. With regards to the parking and the circulation, again, originally 604 parking spaces were required, and they're proposing what they've got now, 389. The proposed addition doesn't take up any of those parking spaces, so the parking lot capacity stays status quo. With regards to the storm drainage, I was involved with the review of the parcel and site where the veterinary hospital went. And they did propose an infiltration basin on that particular lot. And one of the things that we had on the original set of site plans for this applicant was basically showing the existing storm drainage, and Mr. Dykstra had shown just graphically from a planimetric view where the existing detention basin was. And I knew it was constructed, but he just showed it from a planimetric standpoint. We asked them to take some topography in that area and also locate the existing outlet structure. The concern that we had that we wanted to make sure didn't happen was when this church was built roughly 20 years ago, there wasn't a veterinary hospital on that adjacent lot. And if this basin had overflowed onto that triangular piece, it wouldn't have hurt so much, if you will, because there were no improvements there other than the land itself. Now that there's been an approved site plan with an infiltration basin, we wanted to make sure that water from this particular detention basin did not overflow into that and overburden that and cause a premature failure. So Mr. Dykstra prepared this working drawing, which he sent to our office for review. And basically, it showed a couple things. When we looked at the storm drainage report, we found that there's a berm along the old Houses Corner Road, and the water level for the 100-year storm does not go into the next basin. So that issue is a non-concern. Plus, he verified the grades of the existing outlet structure, that if the 100-year storm does get to a certain level, it'll actually go into the storm drainage that was constructed as part of the Route 15 Houses Corner Road realignment project and dispose of it properly. So we were satisfied with the storm drainage based on the additional information that Mr. Dykstra's office furnished to us, that I'm showing you here right now. I don't know, Glenn, if you want to mark this or not. Not necessary.
I guess that answers your A and B points on page 3 and 4.
Yes,
That was something that was submitted to you?
just to our office, yes.
Yes, we should.
Okay.
Why don't you mark it as A1, but make sure that it goes into our file here, at least get a photo. Can you make a color photocopy? Not now.
Okay.
All right? David will give you a library card.
3/13/24.
And what are we going to call it, Dave?
Storm drainage worksheet
Great.
prepared by Dykstra Walker Design Group.
You marked it as A1, right, buddy?
A1 and put 3/13/24 on it.
Thank you.
Dave, would you say that that follows the best management practices that you were looking for in one of your other memos?
I'm sorry, could you say again?
The drainage, does it follow the best water management practices that you were asking for in one of
Yes.
your other
Yes,
memos?
this basin will have some infiltration, and it's an existing situation. And again, the main thing is that it doesn't overflow onto the adjacent property and overburden what the calculations were for the basin on the other property where the vet hospital is proposed. And it also has an outlet structure. So there's a safeguard, if you will, that if the storm water gets to a certain level, it's going to be disposed of properly. And I agree with what Mr. Dykstra said. It's not going to run over Houses Corner Road. It'll get into the stormwater drainage system of Houses Corner Road.
Should we refer to this building as a veterinary hospital or an office building? Because Catherine Sarnat of the planning board said this is an office building and not a veterinary hospital. And to be, in respect to our sister board, the planning board, I mean, they approved this with 6 variances as an office building.
Well, from the standpoint of what we're talking about here with storm drainage,
Yes.
basically impervious cover is impervious cover, regardless of what's being used inside. And I'm not being smart when I say that.
No, I understand it, and I'm not being smart either. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand why. Okay.
And again, probably the biggest thing that the engineers in our office and I looked at when we were looking at this, we wanted to make sure, looking again at A1, if this basin, if something happened that it had failed and overflowed, if you will.
Right.
We wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to add additional runoff to the basin on that office or vet hospital lot and cause that to fail, just like a cascading effect. And based on the grades that Mr. Dykstra's office prepared, it will not. And the safeguard in that is he also got the grades for the outlet structure. That means when the water gets to a certain point, it'll actually go in the storm drainage system and be conveyed away safely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Then with regards to lighting, again, the comments that we had with regards to lighting were limited basically to the proposed addition. I would suggest, I know there was a note on the plan that basically said they developed the final lighting plan during construction. My suggestion is if the board acts favorably upon the application, it be a condition that the lighting be designed now as a condition of any approval. And the reason I say that is it's a situation where you've got to size the wire properly, and later on, if you add additional fixtures, you might have to up the wire size, et cetera, et cetera. So I would recommend that if the board, like I say, is going to grant approval to this, that be a condition of any approval.
Dave, on that subject, we could add some more bollards so we don't have the gaps.
Okay, good.
So that's basically the lighting plan, it's just the bollards along the walkway.
That's correct.
Dave, on the lighting,
Yes, sir.
and is this appropriate for me to ask these questions now, or do I just wait till the end of his presentation?
Oh,
Okay, so in regard to lighting, I'm very concerned about the lighting. I was standing in my backyard last night. It was an absolutely crystal clear night. I could see Orion, I could see all the stars up there. And, my wife and I were just chatting on the deck, talking about how, soon much of Sparta will lose that ability to do that because we are paving over that entire area over there and building, mega warehouses, shopping centers, veterinary hospitals, classrooms, and the light from the 24/7 mega warehouse, is going to obviously affect that future ability to see the stars. And that's one of the reasons I moved here. I don't know if anybody else in Sparta moved here because of the stars and the country, but I think a lot of people did. And I just think that that's something that this board should be certainly concerned about.
And I understand what you're saying, and on this particular application, the lighting, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Dykstra, but the lighting we're talking about here is the low-line bollard lighting.
Okay.
Mainly to illuminate the sidewalks. When you go back to the life safety issues and what have you, God forbid it ever come into play, but if it did in the middle of the night or a time of the year where it was dark, that's why Mr. Dykstra just mentioned add some more of those bollards, just so there was a safe path lit up for someone to escape safely down to, say, the gravel parking area. And they're probably 3 to 4 foot high and downward facing.
And at night, is it just minimal lighting in the church, or is it lit up? Is the parking lot lit up, or?
It's lit up when cars are there, but I think I'm sure you turn off most of your lights at a certain hour and then just leave security lighting on. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yeah, and then even those bollards are just illuminating a small section of sidewalk, so there's really not much visible beyond, but those go off.
There won't be any lighting on the building itself?
I don't, you're asked, I don't believe there's much, you could drive, there's security lighting that stays on. That I couldn't answer, but it's not much, and there's not gonna be any additional on this addition than what's already existing.
So the marginal lighting will not be much greater.
No, the only additional lighting there would be, I believe, just the sidewalk lighting for safety, lighting, and on the back side of the building.
Yeah, well, of course, the architect will have lights at the entrance doors. There has to be a light at each doorway
Right.
on the building.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay. Then moving on to the architectural plans, again, they mentioned in their testimony that the proposed addition, the finishes, as I understood it, are going to match the existing building to blend in. There are some HVAC units along the westerly side of the proposed addition. using that as in dovetailing into the landscape plan. My suggestion is that keeping the appropriate offsets off the mechanical equipment as recommended by those manufacturers, there'd be some landscaping provided just to buffer those areas, so it's pleasing looking to the people in the parking lot and entering into the church property and those passing by. And in addition, I had mentioned that there may be some variances needed because the landscaping that they proposed, without going into substantial analysis, probably does not meet all the requirements of the zoning, and specific about the transitional screening and what have you. But Mr. Dykstra mentioned before that it's a relatively large tract of land. They own a lot of the land around it. Again, I would suggest that they get additional landscaping around the building itself, foundation plantings, just to buffer it and what have you, and break it up. But as far as the transitional screening and what have you, because they own so much and there's woods behind them, the applicant may want to make some more testimony to request any additional variances along landscaping that they may request from the board. Then with regard to the utilities, I agree, yes, they do obtain water from the township water system. And Mr. Dykstra indicated that as far as their septic system goes, they've had the review of the county health department, and that's apparently a go with them right now for what they're proposing. They're not proposing any new signage for this project. Again, we talked about the Bollard Light Foundation as a detail. They did not provide any environmental impact statement for this addition. But again, as I mentioned in my completeness review, the items they really had to address, as far as I was concerned, mainly in this case, the septic system, and they've made the repairs for Wilson Contracting to get that put in conformance with the county health department requirements. I listed on item number 14 of the report several different agencies and divisions of the township offices that they have to get approval from, ultimately for any approval the board may consider. And as we usually recommend, they provide an as-built plan if the board approves it and the facility is constructed, just so there's a record of everything for the township for future years. And that's my report.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
David. Mr. Dykstra, do you want to address David's comments on this potential transitional screening variance or variances?
Yes, well, the ordinance does require transitional screening when conditional use butts up to a traditional use, like and in this case, I think we put key maps. And north is kind of facing mostly up on this sheet, but so to the northeast, on our subject property alone, we have wooded land before the property line, and then beyond that is more wooded land, and then there's that's a new cleared area. They call it a farm now. I don't know if you've seen that on Houses Corner Road. They cleared a lot of forest, and it's a farm, some kind of farm. I forget the name of it. And then the only other, so there's no point in us adding any screening in that direction. It would be pointless because we have forest behind us. And if you go to the east, you're basically, the church owns the balance of that property for probably 2,000 feet all the way up, and then you go up the mountain to, which is completely forested. So there would be it would be pointless to add screening there. And as I mentioned, we also have wooded land between this site and Layton Lane, and there's only one house nearby on Layton Lane, and there's already there's a grade differential and a substantial wooded area between this property and that house. So there's really, and next to that is North Jersey Septic, so I don't think we'd need to buffer them. Maybe vice versa, but. And, so that's my reasoning that I don't even know it's applicable actually to this case, given the situation on this property. But if it is, we would like the relief to not install.
I'm sorry,
that
that's a
type of
condition of a
landscaping.
conditional use, Dave?
Beg your pardon?
That was a condition of the conditional use? this
I'd have to
landscape?
check, but I don't think so.
Because they
This
would have
is a
had to
design
address,
standard.
It is a
Right.
condition.
well, you would have had to address that at the time you did your original.
That's right. There was a full
Plans.
landscape plan approved with the original
So-
application, yes.
So backing up where Dave is going, does anything that you're doing tonight affect this issue? in your
No,
opinion?
and I was going to point out that we did have an approval there was a landscape plan that was approved for the overall project with the original variances. And we don't meet 30% of the
Well,
landscape.
the board already looked at it, and the board already made a
That's
decision on
right.
it, and that's the point. But David should call it out just to make sure there's no changes. So Dave was just doing his job.
No,
Ken,
we don't disagree.
the last question I have for you is, yeah, this is still a conditionally permitted use. I've already indicated that the height obviously isn't triggered. The parking isn't triggered under the standards. All the other conditional use standards, you're still lined up and meeting all of those. And I just want you to state that on the record, please.
Yes, we meet
If it's true.
all the other conditional standards
Okay,
other than the parking and the height.
good. Thank you. I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
So bottom line, no transitional screening variance necessary then?
No, because you already decided it. And nothing
Just wanted to
changed
make
under the
sure.
ordinance.
Okay.
No
Mark, you have a-
trees.
No,
No-
the-
no-
I- They
trees.
want to put trees in, they certainly can, but the fact is, the site's already been approved, they're doing nothing to trigger it, no standard has been changed, Dave, if I'm missing something, tell me.
Not that I know of.
They've called it out just to put it in, but the board already took action on this, at least on one other occasion and maybe several other occasions.
Oh, well, there are going to be trees, so we are landscaping around the new addition. So there's
Right,
There's
That's the
six
foundation
evergreen
stuff
trees
that Dave
planted,
talked
and then
about.
more landscaping that Dave has required.
Yeah, and that's the foundation things that are triggered by this application, is Dave's whole point. Okay, I get it.
Is that what you were looking for, Dave?
Yes. I looked at this application, quite frankly, as a limited area that we're dealing with, this addition.
Right.
And when you look at the addition, based on what was proposed for landscaping, I had a couple concerns. Number one, it's always nice to break up the foundation, especially on a relatively large addition like this. Number two, as I mentioned before, a lot of their HVAC units are right along the ground. Again, respecting and staying the offsets that are required from the manufacturer for appropriate ventilation for different HVAC units and what have you. It's nice to buffer them if you can, just so they're not right out in front of, I was going to say God and everybody, but I guess that's appropriate here. So you're not out there in that area just looking at machinery, if you will. They've got a beautiful church, and it's nice to have it buffered like that.
It is. It is nice to have a
Yeah.
buffer there.
And as far as the other areas, I know they've got their recreation fields and what have you.
Correct.
And in some areas here, you've got the stormwater detention basin that we talked about. Plus, I know you've got the Township of Sparta's water transmission main going through here. We don't want to put any landscaping or trees on that. That corridor has to be kept open because it's the lifeblood of the town coming in from Germany Flats.
Is it best practices not to put trees around a detention basin?
Different types of basins, but for maintenance purposes and something like this, I would leave that open from the standpoint that when I've been out there and going down their boulevard and what have you, it's nice to be able to look over to that and see, all right, the water level is at a certain level. Everything is evacuating out of the basin within the required 72 hours, et cetera, the normal best management practices from DEP. And if something isn't working right, you're able to see it. The problem I've seen, sometimes if you put anything as far as trees in the basin itself, the next thing you know, you've got leaves coming down, potentially clogging the outlet structure, and then you've got a whole different set of problems.
Is it best practices at the detention basin? I think you alluded to that it has to drain to nothing every 72 hours?
Normally, if it's.
72 hours after a rainstorm or
Yeah,
something?
yes. On a certain specific size storm, it's supposed to evacuate within 72-hour period. If it doesn't, then what happens, there might be some clogging someplace, and the applicant's consultant and their contractor might have to go in, excavate the area if something's clogged up, and reconstruct the bottom of it so it does in fact let the water quality storm out in no longer than 72 hours.
So who in the town makes sure that that happens? I mean, I drive up Woodport Road and I see the new beautiful detention basin put in. below the Askin Hooker building. And that's really like a new lake in our town, because I rarely see that go out.
Well, one of the things, I'm pretty sure I put in the reports that I've sent to the board on different site plans. This is a little unique because it's an existing basin, but in the DEP regulations, they require an operation and maintenance manual. And basically, in that operation and maintenance manual, they have forms that say, all right, after certain size storms come through, you're supposed to go out and check and make sure the outlet structure isn't blocked. There's no, the grates are in place. It drained within the 72 hours, if that's the appropriate case. Somebody initials it, and what have you, and make sure, and the property owner basically is responsible for that. Now, on sites like this, the operation and maintenance manual actually gets recorded in the chain of title for the property. And the reason for that is, this is a little unique here, but it would be Sparta Evangelical Free Church, Inc. to Sparta Evangelical Church, Inc., just so it's in the chain of title. And one of the reasons the DEP wants that done is because, not so much in this case, but let's say the church sold it to Acme Company. Well, when Acme Company goes to buy this, they're going to have their due diligence, and they're going to do a title search on the property, and that operation and maintenance manual that it's in the chain of title, that'll show up in the title search. And they'll look at it and they'll say, oh, we've got to maintain this basin. And it brings it to their attention. And sometimes what happens, and I looked one of these up for the planning board today, as a matter of fact. I looked up one as an example for BWB Holdings, Biondi, the new investment company down the street. They've got their basin in the front. And in the verbiage for that, it said they're responsible for the maintenance and protection of it, but they also named the Township of Sparta as a third-party beneficiary. Not necessarily that the township has to do anything, but if there was a public health issue involved, they could go in there and do something.
So there's no one in the town that enforces that these things drain within 72 hours. It's just the property owner's
It's the property owner's responsibility.
theoretical responsibility
Yes,
to stay on top of that.
that's right. And that's why you have that operation and maintenance manual.
Is there any concern that since we're going to be putting more impervious coverage, more water over to the detention basin, that you've got children playing on the soccer field next to the detention basin, if I'm correct? Is there anything that inhibits those children from going in to play in the water, or the ball goes in the water? What happens then?
Well, it's just a detention basin. It only holds water for short periods of time. No different than, if you had a pond next to your property, the children in the pond, there's only so much protection you can do. Could you fence this? Yes, but, I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Mark. Any other questions from the board members?
Yeah, I had another question on the Schenck Price letter, looking for the verification of taxes and assessments in support of the planning board application. It says that the applicant is Perona Realty Corporation. Perona Realty Corporation, I thought the church was a nonprofit, and Perona Realty Corporation is a for-profit corporation. It's paying thousands of dollars of taxes in other locations.
Sure, that was just a typographical error from a previous letter.
I don't think there's a Protestant in that family.
Any other questions, Mark?
No, sir.
Nothing? Thank you. I'll now open it to the public. If anyone has any comments or questions, please come forward. Seeing no one in the public, it's now closed and back to our hearing. Again, no other questions at this point.
No question.
All right, the chair will entertain a motion approving this application. Usually our vice chairman does it, but he's not here tonight. And if no one else does, I can,
I'll make a motion
So
to,
moved.
No, we have to get someone to do the motion. There's a lot in here, Rich.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
No, I don't have all the details written down.
All right. The chair will make a motion to have our board attorney prepare a resolution approving application 1-24, block 17001, lot 3, Sparta Evangelical Free Church, D variance, amended preliminary site plan to construct a 10,440 square foot building addition for classrooms with the following conditions. Lighting plan be completed as part of the site plan. All points in our board engineer's report, David Simmons, be adhered to. Also, as-built plans be provided upon completion of the project. And that's according to all plans and testimony submitted here tonight. David, did you have any other potential conditions? We covered it all?
The only other items, Mr. Chairman, that I noted were brought up tonight was show the fire hydrant. That's not in my report, just so that shows up on the revised plan, and the extension of the sidewalk to the gravel parking areas discussed by Mr. LaRuffa.
And the applicant accepts that, right?
We do.
Chairman, I think the application, and council can correct me if I'm wrong, it's for conditional use reaffirmation, I think, and that's why I asked Mr. Dykstra the question, along with the no change in the use variance part of it, but the board retains its jurisdiction. It's, I think, preliminary and amended preliminary and final site plan, John, right?
Agreed, yeah.
Okay, you don't agree, you don't disagree with that. And I don't think there were any ancillary C variances on this at all. So I think that's what you actually need. I think just amending your motion, Mr. Chairman, just so it's clear. That's
All right, thank you, Glenn. Marissa,
I'll second it.
any discussion? No? Thanks.
In your motion, maybe I wasn't as focused on it as I should have been, but you did waive the trees.
Did I do what?
You did mention that you are going to waive the trees,
Oh, that's in,
that we are waiving the trees?
David had mentioned in his reports and so forth on that. There was no motion on that from me.
Okay, oh, all right.
Yeah.
So the trees stay? No, the trees go. They're asking for a variance on the trees, aren't they?
I brought up the issue as far as if there was a waiver variance needed for the 30% planting mass and the transitional screening. And I think Mr. Dykstra put testimony on the board requesting that relief to the extent it may be necessary, if at all.
if at all, because the board already acted on it.
Right, and
other
what
times.
they are, correct me if I'm wrong, what they are agreeing to do is to provide additional landscaping around the proposed addition so that there's additional foundation screening around the foundation of the addition and also around the mechanical equipment to help buffer and soften it.
And that'll be subject to your final review and approval.
Yes, if that's all right with the board.
Yeah, thank you, David. All right, Mark?
But no 12-inch trees?
No, what now?
No 12-inch trees?
No additional trees.
No.
That's the variance, right? Because the tree,
Well, again, they had a site plan that had from roughly 20 years ago, that had a landscaping plan. I didn't see that, but Mr. Dykstra indicated they had put it on. And what they're basically doing now is just doing this little micro area, if you will, of the property. And we're concentrating on that as far as putting the additional foundation plantings along the mechanical equipment and the foundation to soften that.
so we're sure that all those plantings that were given, that were in the approval 20 years ago are still in this plan? Yes?
Oh, yeah, and substantially, I'm not sure, I didn't do an as-built of it more recently. In 20 years, there may be more, actually. And there may be, some shade trees may not have survived, but then the church may have, I think they actually landscaped more in front of the building than was originally approved or required around the current building. So it's, I'm going to say we substantially, the project still substantially conforms to the original approved landscape design. And the landscape design was also for the entire build-out, the phase 1 through 3. So just like the parking was.
Okay, Mark? Marissa, please call the roll.
Michael Joseph,
Yes.
Richard LaRufa,
Yes.
Richard Rohrbacher,
Yes.
Mark Scott,
No.
Landon Teneri,
Yes.
Chairman Kenneth Larry.
Yes. Oh, your application's been approved. Good luck with everything.
Mr. Chairman, the rest of the board, thank you for your time.
Welcome.
We appreciate the thoughtful consideration.
Council, how fast do you folks want to get started on all this? Can you wait a month, John? That's a simple question.
Coming to the idea, Glenn, of waiving the written resolution on
I
this?
don't know whether, spring is in the air, so I just have no idea what they're doing.
Mr. Keith, I'm glad, I appreciate you bringing it up. They would like to try and get building permits moving as early as possible, since all of a sudden we wake up today and it's beautiful building weather,
Spring is in the air.
spring is in the air.
Is the
So-
board willing to allow them to waive receipt of the resolution, and they can proceed at their own risk?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Second.
So if you waive the resolution, there's a 45-day period, right, where someone could object to the,
Yep.
to the approval that we gave, that this board gave tonight?
Yes.
Okay. So if they wait, so how does the time frame change? It's 45 days from today, or it's 45
No,
days?
the
from-
45 days has nothing to do with it. They're proceeding at their own risk. And that means they can go pull building permits if somebody wants to appeal it, and somebody ultimately, a year and a half from now, wins in court, then they'd have to go back to start all over again because they're proceeding at their own risk. The fact is, they had no objectors. There were no rival congregations coming out, Pastor. There was, there was nothing else happening here. So quite frankly, for me not to have brought something like that up, given the season, and sometimes, you know, when we're preparing, I've been in John's position a lot of times, this is just something I think it's my responsibility to bring up if it's helpful to an applicant, that's all.
Call the roll, Marissa, on it.
No, it's just all in favor. And I think you had an all in favor, pretty much, I guess, right? All those in favor, please
Aye.
signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
Good luck, John. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good job, guys.
Just one thing, Marissa, is it possible, per the chair here, if you can contact the mayor, council, and Roxanne on the open alternate one position?
Yeah,
Get
I'll
an
talk to Roxanne
update and
tomorrow.
when they're going to eventually elevate Landon to alternate one,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll talk to Roxanne tomorrow.
All right, thank you. Any other points to bring up before we adjourn?
Anybody else in the public want to say?
No, that was close. Oh, over here, at the bottom there now. Does anyone in the public have any comments or questions about items that were not on the agenda tonight? Oh,
Harold P. Cook, Esquire, the property in Sparta Lake.
oh,
It's not, okay, I'm sorry, I don't know how that,
Rich, I always.
I'm sorry you had to, well, you got to see a nice application. They're not going tonight. I was in touch with, we were both in touch with the applicant. I suspect you're not going to hear from them until
Probably to the May,
till the May
May
hearing,
meeting.
sir. And I think they're going to do a new notice too,
yeah,
right?
they're
Melissa?
re-noticing everything again.
Okay, sorry.
Re-update my address, because you guys have my address wrong.
Oh, I would have to, you can give me the address and I'll let the, you have to go to actually the tax assessor's office to revise your, address. They could,
That means, what it means is your address in Sparta Township is on the books wrong. She's, all right, but that's what, she doesn't have anything to do with it.
yeah, you
You
just
gotta
have to go to the tax
office.
assessor's office and they could fix it for you.
Okay?
But they'll take your money.
Okay, no other questions? All right, you're welcome. The board will Entertain a motion adjourning the meeting.
Motion.
Second.
Everyone in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you.
Yeah, well, de facto.
Catherine Madison.
That was a while ago.
Last year.